This is our 1 in 3 Autoethnography with your hosts, Steven and Levi.
On this episode, we'll be speaking about managing our lifestyle, and that means managing our eating, sleeping, our levels of work.
Yeah, what he said. On this podcast, we talk about our lived experiences with mental illness. So before we get started, you gotta know that we are not medical professionals, and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. So last episode, we talked about maintaining new habits. And in this episode, we're gonna kind of delve into that. Some of the lifestyle changes or the things that we do to kind of manage our mental illnesses and to help us with our mental health. So what was the first lifestyle choices that you decided were the most important?
Like schoolwork, exercising, attempting to eat right, mental health stuff. When you started your mental health journey, what would you say the things you focused on the most were?
Well, first of all, I'm very glad to be here on your show. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
The things that I focused mostly on when I started my mental health journey were drinking, sleeping, and eating properly. Because you knew me from first year, and you remember my sleeping routine?
More like lack thereof of a sleeping routine.
Well, it was go to bed at 6 a.m., wake up at 2 p.m.
6 a.m.? You went to bed at 8 a.m. one day. I remember I was waking up for school and you were going to bed. And I was like, did you just wake up? And you're like, no, I'm just going to bed.
Yeah, and then I would get drunk at 2 p.m. because it's the end of the day. And then I would order skip the dishes, or I would have buttered ramen noodles. And that was my life for a little bit.
Would you care to explain how you changed your eating habits?
No, that's a good question. When you started talking earlier, you mentioned how some of the things you did were hand in hand, right? And that's kind of the sort of same thing. I guess the first thing that would have changed is my sleeping. And, I would start going to bed at a reasonable time, like 3 a.m. and wake up at say the afternoon. So now instead of 2 p.m., I'm eating at a better time of 12 or 1 or something. And once I could get my drinking under control, then I ate more because, when you're drinking, you don't really get hungry sometimes.
Yeah, you have certain cravings, but you don't eat meals really.
Yeah, exactly. So once I got that under control, I could just focus on eating better.
It was also the thought that we had, we could just fill our calories for the day with just alcohol calories.
Exactly. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is that all of these things are in tandem, right? Every factor is going to affect every other factor. So once you start making one change, you can see a cascade of other changes in your life, sort of.
Now, I know you started getting your eating and sleeping under control before the end of first year. So what inspired you to do that?
I honestly don't know.
Was it rock climbing or school, academics,
Oh, I think it was a mix of rock climbing and you bullying me, because it wasn't really bullying, but you always make comments when I went to bed or when I woke up or when I went to bed and you were going to school at 8 a.m. I'm like, yeah, you know what? This is kind of dysfunctional.
I do remember. I think part of the reason that my sleep was more normalized in the terms of, society and waking up in the morning and going to bed at night. I think that was because I did drink less than you for a bit there, at the end of first year. And that was not messing with my sleep schedule as much, because drinking does, when you're passed out drunk, it's not sleep, it's being passed out,
It's hard on your body to be eating wrong, not exercising, all that stuff. But one of the reasons I started eating better is because my grandfather passed away in November or December or something. And he was one of my primary role models. I remember some of the last things he asked me about what I'm doing in school. And while we were there, a lot of my family asked me what I'm doing. And I kind of realized that I'm messing it up, like I'm really not in it for a reason. And there was people that were supporting me, and there was people that believed in me. And I was like kind of letting them down if I don't take this seriously. So fixing my sleep was, a step in the right direction, in my opinion, because it was me trying to make that change so I could be a better student, right?
And I know towards the beginning, or at the beginning of second year, you were really driven to do well that term and to be able to transfer into kinesiology by the thoughts of your family as well. I remember that.
Yeah, because I keep my grandfather's watch beside my desk, and I keep photos of my dad because that reminds me that I don't know, it kind of reminds me that people believe in me, and I'm sort of, in a way. Because yeah, actually that's kind of a good way to put it. Like, you remember back in first year how we always talked about like feeling empty and how we felt like it wasn't kind of worth the effort to put it into ourselves because we both kind of hated ourselves. So it was like, why bother making these changes if you're somebody you hate, right? What was the tipping point for you, or what inspired you to start doing better in school, focusing, making these changes?
Definitely some social pressure from friends that were far smarter than me, it seemed at the time, because they were able to do so much better academically than I was. And I know I didn't do like great, but I didn't feel bad about the amount of effort I put in there. Second term of first year, I felt like, I feel like now at the time it was a try. I was actually trying then, compared to first term where, we literally drank all the time. But anyways,
was the motivation to better yourself, or did you have sort of an external reason to be making these lifestyle changes?
It was more internally motivated, more just out of disappointment and just thinking about how I knew I could do better and my parents knew I could do better and had relayed that to me. And like, I definitely understood. And when I went back home for Christmas and I had my marks back, I didn't share them because I was ashamed of my grades. I wouldn't tell my family what I got because I was like, wow, I really screwed up. And that definitely motivated me.
So it was disappointment that started to push you to develop healthier habits?
Academically, yes, in a way, but for eating and exercising, I think it was definitely, always been an uphill journey getting myself to eat enough, right? Or eat healthy, just because I forget to eat. And I know it sounds stupid, like how do you forget to eat? But I do forget to eat. Even like, and I was telling you how I used to work at the dairy there at that farm, and I would do 16-hour days, and I would eat one meal just because I would forget, right?
Yeah, because you're working so much.
But yeah, anyways, I think the eating better was more motivated by you after you took that nutrition class. Yeah. Because, I don't know, just you explaining everything kind of got me thinking about my own eating and how it was pretty terrible. Mm-hmm. And also just through my love of cooking, right? I really like cooking, and I like cooking my entire university career here. And eating bad, like making terrible food was not interesting, and I felt disappointed in myself as someone who liked cooking.
Making terrible food as in you cooking rice, right?
More as in, what was the worst thing we ate?
I don't know. You talked about like salty mac and cheese. The worst thing that you ate was food from the sink.
Yeah, I know.
But the worst thing that you made?
The worst thing I made.
I don't actually know if you made anything too terrible.
I don't know either, but I did make a lot of unhealthy things. I know we ate a lot of red meat, which is not good for your cardiovascular system.
I mean, we ate a lot of like buttered ramen noodles.
We also only ate one meal a day.
The transition for you wasn't from eating poorly to eating better. It was eating poorly to eating healthy. And you talked about, making sure that you're eating enough and making sure you're eating the right things. Like some days as a student, yeah, you're just going to have ramen noodles, but the important thing is just to eat something. And I tell myself that sometimes too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I truly believe that as well. And I mean, I'm trying to make health conscious food choices, but I'm not going to be upset at myself if I don't have a health conscious meal every single day.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind as Levi and I go through all these lifestyle changes, is that it's not always consistent and it's not always possible to do it in the best way, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And it might not be logical, say, to implement it in your life even.
Did you try any of the big lifestyle changes before university?
Oh, well, I guess I would say I definitely tried exercising more properly, but I was always very disappointed that there wasn't instant results, or that I was disappointed at my own strength level for a long time there. And even now, like, I still have some of that body dysmorphia. Like, I appear to myself in the mirror, I still look like that 125-pound kid in high school and not the healthy 152 pounds or whatever I am now, you know? And so that there's that. And I mean, when you start exercising and your strength level isn't where you expected it or isn't where you wanted it to be, that can be really disheartening. And that was disheartening, and it did throw me off for a couple of years.
Right. And it sounds like you were exercising for not really aesthetics, but to increase your strength rather than for health benefits, I suppose.
Well, originally, I would say in high school, I think I was trying to go have a more aesthetic appearance, but and then when we came to university and I first started lifting weights with you, that was more strength focused, and now it's more strength health focused.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly the best way to frame it. As a kinesiology student, I really like to hear people not talking about exercise as like soul crushing workout. It's just like something you do to maintain your health. I know that we were both kind of in our rock bottoms in university. Like, did you ever feel like you weren't worth the effort to make a change?
Yeah, I think that would be something that could be applied to me, but I don't think that I ever truly consciously thought that. It was always just sitting there in my subconscious, like, I feel useless, so I am useless, so there's no point in changing because I'm useless, right?
And did you motivate yourself with that voice?
Yeah, definitely, but negatively. I motivated myself to prove that voice right, i.e., I would drink more or do self-destructive behavior rather than positive behavior. And the thing that helped me combat that the most would be my friendships and my relationships with the people around me, and just honestly seeing their disappointment in me. It's hard to see that. I'm fine with people being upset or angry at me. I'm more fine with that than seeing people disappointed in me, because they know and I know that I could have done better. And it's like, well, why didn't I?
Yeah, because you know that you could have put more effort into school. You know that you could have put more effort into yourself.
And it's not that it's not expected of me, right? And it wasn't really pressure as in like an external pressure, like these people were actually pointing out how that was, but it's like, it's that unspoken conversation between two people, you know? It's the understanding that you share when you're like, yeah, I scored a 55 on my test, and it's like, okay, Levi, you are not a stupid, I shouldn't say that. Okay, Levi, well, why did you score like that? What did you or did you not do that ruined your academic performance?
It sounds like a lot of what helped you change was social pressure and kind of not really measuring up to a standard, but recognizing that you aren't doing this university thing properly, right?
It was more, I know, and the people around me knew that I could achieve far greater, you know?
Yeah, it was like disappointing the people that believe in you is probably one of the worst feelings, because you know they were around you for so long and they saw you grow, and then you turn into an alcoholic university student who barely passes any of his grades, and you think about how much money you put in, you think about how it makes your parents feel, you think about what your relatives think, and then it all comes back to you, like why, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know if my parents did feel like this or didn't, but it is definitely how I interpreted how they felt, you know?
Yeah, that unspoken conversation, because obviously you would know that there's a little bit of disappointment. Like, if the difference is if you put in the effort and you tried but you still didn't do great, it would still kind of be satisfying, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't be disappointed. It would be, well, you tried your best. There's nothing more that anyone can ask of you, right? You can only do your best.
And we both went from not trying at all to just doing a little bit, right? Like, that's why the first episode was called Baby Steps, because this whole thing isn't just changing the way you eat completely in a day or in a month or something. It's hard, it's challenging. It's the tiny steps, the small little changes in habits that you do over day or every day. Like, for me, it was not waking up at 2 p.m. but starting to go to bed at 3 a.m. And that took me like a month to do. It's slow and it sucks.
See, I never really had trouble with the sleep thing, but I did have trouble with exercising and the amount I would put on myself. I would always start way too much, right? And it took me a long time to understand that I need to ease into it and that I shouldn't be expecting myself to immediately, say, go from planting, like I don't have the same strength as I did when I was lifting compared to when I was planting. But when I come back, I can't expect to go and hit the same weights, like.
Yeah, exactly. I think I had that exact same problem too. Like, I think for me, it was just cockiness, because I felt like even though I haven't lifted weights in like 6 months, I can still do the old amount of weights I used to use, or I could do the same intensity regimens. Like, no, I think we all want a change, but it takes a really long time. And that's the shitty part about it.
Exactly. You have to ease into it. It's like changing our eating habits. You don't have to immediately switch to eating like half your plate full of vegetables and everything like that. You even just adding one more or an extra vegetable, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. I think, again, measuring your success by effort rather than result is probably the best way I like to put it now, anyway.
And not comparing yourself to how it should be, but to what feels comfortable for you to change.
Yeah, exactly. I like the way you put that, because a lot of my rock bottom experience was comparisons to other people and how I should be and how my life should be perfect, how I could be a perfect university student. But the more I thought about it, was I can't do any of that, Like, I couldn't be a picture perfect student. I couldn't do a lot of things that I wanted to do, but then I realized it's because I'm not supposed to do those things, or I don't want to do those things like other people. Like, sure, my sleeping is never going to be great. My sleeping routine is still messed up right now, but it works for me, and that's the important thing, is finding something that works for you, because there's no cookie cutter approach to any of this.
So now that we've spoken on how we've changed our lifestyles and how we live different lifestyles now, how do you manage the amount of work that you put into doing this lifestyle and your free or your downtime?
What?
So to clarify that, so you go to the gym, say, an hour a day, you try and get to sleep at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., you do your schoolwork for I don't know how long in a day, and you also meal prep or eat your meals 3 times a day. So how do you manage the amount of time that you put into, say, prepping a meal or going to a gym versus schoolwork versus, say, just sitting down and having some Steven time?
Well, first of all, Steven doesn't really get Steven time.
Ideally, how would you manage it then?
Well, what I do right now, it's not perfect, obviously, but it works really well for me. We talked in our pilot episode about routines and how I like to schedule out my day, and that really works for me, because scheduling my day, it's like setting all these little mini goals that I can accomplish. So it's like yeah, I'm going to exercise for a half hour today. And that doesn't mean I have to go to the gym and like get all super sweaty and stuff. It could be a walk around the block and I'd be happy with that. But it's just meeting that mini goal of the things that I think are important, like eating, exercising, and a lot of that. Like I'll allot maybe 6 to 8 hours every day to school, and whatever pops up, I'll put that in my schedule too. But I guess the most important thing for me with my ADHD was being able to write it down, having that planner, because then I could actually like remember everything I need to do and realize how long things took to do so that I could actually do them without getting overwhelmed, you know? And yeah, like again, those mini goals, it's like, yeah, it just gives me a sense of accomplishment every day, because if I complete my schedule, then I feel great. But how do you go about managing these new changes in your life?
Well, actually, I have the opposite problem. Levi gets too much Levi time typically in a day, and not enough time devoted to work. But I also make it work. Typically, I'll wake up pretty early compared to you or my girlfriend. I'll wake up 6:30 or 7, and then I sit there and either read or play video games for a bit, you know. And then I look at what I have to do that day, or what I have to study, or what I should do, and then I just do it, right? Like I just get right into it typically. So then once I finish that, then I'll look around the house and, you know, decide on schoolwork or anything, or not schoolwork, housework or anything like that. And then, you know, I just play more video games in the evening. But throughout the day, I will take breaks, or I will manage my course load, or I will manage what I expect to do in my classes that day. So if I originally started the day and I was like, okay, I have to watch my math lectures and I have to watch my, say, physiology and pharmacology lectures, all of a sudden I realize, oh, I have a quiz tomorrow, or, oh, I'm really behind in this class. Oh, I should do this as well. Then I'll either add or replace what I expect to do during the day. And that works for me, because even though I was behind quite a bit in this term, I was still able to stay caught up in a way, you know, because it would allow me to adjust my day to the needs that I had to do, right?
So it sounds like kind of a semi-loose schedule.
Yeah, it was definitely semi-loose. It was, some days it was fly by the seat of your pants, but it worked.
I have no idea how you do that still, man. Like I know we talked about this in the pilot episode, but I couldn't imagine not having it written down of what I need to do, because I would just be so lost.
Oh, it's written down on my whiteboard. It's just not written down really. It's very broad.
Yeah, not like specific instructions like you need to be exercising from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m.
Oh, and yeah, and getting my exercise in, that's another good point. It's either I exercise in the morning before I do schoolwork, and that'll generally be like going to the gym, like a full workout. Or I'll say I'll go to the gym and do a full workout in the evening, but I actually won't. So I'll just take a walk at noon.
Yeah, and that's still great, right? Yeah, like those.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not disappointed those days either.
And
how do you manage your expectations with your day-to-day lifestyle, or how do you manage the disappointment if you don't manage to, say, complete your tasks for a day, or you don't live the lifestyle that you want to have?
Well, this reflects to oh god, I don't even know what episode we're on right now.
This reflects to self-compassion.
Yeah, this goes back to our self-compassion episode, right? I tell myself that, you know, it's okay, I messed up today, it's okay. Or some days I really need to crack down and be like, listen, Steven, you did nothing today, and you need to.
That's not okay.
Yeah, like you need to be taking care of yourself. You know, it's finding that balance between being an asshole and loving yourself, because I really do need a kick in the ass sometimes to be like, hey, get out of bed, man. Like I can't do it lovingly sometimes, and that's okay, because it works differently at times. Like if I need to go to the gym, or if I really need to meal prep, but I'm just sitting there, some days still I'll have to be like, just do it, man. Like you really just need to do it.
Do you ever make deals with yourself? As in, if you do this one task, I will not do anything else for the rest of the day? Or say I can play video games or do X, you know?
Honestly, no, because like I said, I don't really get downtime. um, how do you manage your disappointment, I suppose?
Generally with food, I eat my feelings. No. Well, in some ways, yes, I eat a lot of snack foods because I feel guilty. But anyways, it's also because I just believe I need to eat more.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I found out the other day, or I realized the other day that like when I get really anxious, I like to pick at my face.
Yeah.
Which I do quite often.
I do that when I get stressed, I do that.
Yeah, me too. Or like when I get stressed, it's like I'm not a stress eater, I'm a stress not eater, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like
yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
How do you manage these lifestyle changes at challenging moments of your life? Like if you say have a stressful day or if you just had a poor life experience.
Honestly, I ignore them. I don't care about them on those days. I'll do what makes me happy and comfortable that day, because if I'm trying to manage all these other things in my life, I won't be able to deal with, the elephant in the room or the most serious problem. So I'm just like, it's okay to take a break day, like you can get back on the track tomorrow. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And do you ever find like you get too far off the track? Like you
yes.
you kind of forget that.
Some days. Yeah.
You need to go back to exercise.
And then it comes back to self-compassion and being like, yeah, you need to get to work. I know like you've had a hard time, but it's over now. You've got to get back.
But yeah, even reflecting on how we both commented on at the start of this episode on how we kind of both did it out of disappointment from other people, and now it's an internalized self-care for ourselves. It's interesting. So how would you say that you kind of remotivate yourself now to be adopting these healthy lifestyle choices?
Honestly, how I feel when I don't have these lifestyle choices definitely motivates me, because I physically feel worse and I mentally feel worse typically when I'm not doing these things. And it's also the idea, my goals in life, right? I do want to be stronger and healthier. So obviously I have to continue working out to do that, right? And I do want to, eat good food for one, because I just like food that tastes good. And I do want to develop my cooking skills. So that challenges me on the eating and cooking front, And then like sleeping, I don't really have a terrible problem with sleeping, but I do need to sleep longer. I typically sleep very short amounts of time, like only I don't know, my average sleep would probably be 5 hours a night.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. So extending my sleep is something that I am working on and I have been working on for a while.
So it sounds like intrinsic motivation now. Like you're no longer doing it to not disappoint other people. You're doing it because you have these goals and
because it makes me happy to do it too.
That's really great to hear. If things don't go well and you get frustrated, how do you deal with that?
Well, like I said before, I just don't.
Did you already say that? I
just don't deal with it.
No, I mean like if you get frustrated by not meeting your goals, how do you deal with it?
I sort of collapse in a way. I definitely feel really disappointed in myself, and that sort of drives the motivation, which I don't think is very healthy. But it's also, I do experience some of the relapse that we were talking about last episode, especially at those junctions or at those times. I do relapse quite a bit on my mental health and mental well-being, and it kind of it snowballs into sitting myself down again and being like, okay, I have to do these things, and it starts over, right?
And what do those frustrated with Levi self-talk moments sound like? Like, what does that conversation sound like in your head?
It would be like, okay, Levi, you really need to get this done. You have to work out. Like you have these goals, you have to work towards them every day, else it's not going to work. Blah, 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 blah. You're a disappointment. You're useless.
That was a very quick escalation.
Yeah, my brain likes to escalate like that sometimes.
So it sounds like you start with self-compassion, and then does that make you motivated, or is that just kind of a...
No, that's a reflex. The reason I start with self-compassion for sure is because I'm trying to combat those in some situations. Still, it's not every day that this happens, and it's not all the time, but it is just trying to combat that. Or it's like if I've had a really, really bad day or a bad week or something, then it's like the restart that I talked about.
And do you still feel like you're in the stages of learning self-compassion?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because it sounds like you are starting to do the right thing, which is great, like forgiving yourself and all that. And I guess it's okay that you start to spiral.
Yeah, like I said last episode, I know all the information pretty much on it, and I know the steps I have to take. It's just working towards implementing that in my life that's taking a while. And that makes sense, honestly.
No, it's reasonable. It's I've been doing the whole self-compassion thing for like 2 years, which isn't a long time, but it's a tenth of my life if you look at it. I've been doing it for a while, and I still find it frustrating when things go wrong. Like some days I find it hard not to just beat myself up without a reason. Like on those days where I can't accomplish anything, maybe just because I had a shitty day, but usually for me, it's when my depressive bipolar symptoms kick in and everything just feels shitty. That's when it gets the worst, my self-talk. Like when I can't manage these healthy lifestyle things like walking, eating, exercising, I get really critical because it feels like I didn't fail someone else. It feels like I failed myself,
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to clarify here. I just thought about this, but when we speak about our healthy lifestyle choices and everything like that, we are not using this as a form of therapy. It's something that we are working towards outside of therapy in our lives that help with our mental illness. They aren't something that we use in a therapeutic way, really.
I mean, where do you feel you are right now in terms of motivating yourself, in terms of your mental health, in terms of adopting these lifestyle changes?
I feel like a good solid 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, and what makes you say that?
Because I definitely think I'm better than where I started at a 0, like significantly better. But I also know that I have a significant way to go still.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, I guess. Recognizing that is great. I would also say that I'm probably nowhere near where I want to be yet. Maybe like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but
But it's even if you aren't where you want to be, like it's not problematic really.
But I think the hardest part or not the hardest part, I say that so much. I think one of the most challenging things about taking care of your mental health when you have a mental illness is that you can't always control or prevent your mental health symptoms from flaring up. Like my depressive bipolar symptoms are going to show up, and when they do, it wreaks havoc on the things that I want to do, on my goals and all that stuff, because I just don't have the energy to anymore. And
what about manic?
Well, that's a different story. I do so much when I get hypomanic, but it's frustrating and it's painful to see me not reach my goals because of
something that
this
you can't control.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when we talk about like ADHD as an invisible disability or mood disorders as serious, the implications on your life, it's like, despite these changes Levi and I are making, it's like sometimes the mental illness flares up, right? And that's hard.
Yeah, and it's difficult to deal with, and it's systemic, right? It affects every part of our lives.
Every part. And I know that our lifestyle changes are a lot more than we talk about. Like there's social aspects, a lot of stuff like that, but it's really, really, really hard and demotivating, soul crushing sometimes to see that you did everything right, but something happened.
You still feel bad.
Yeah, because of your mental illness, and that's tough.
Yeah, it is something that sometimes you have to be able to just deal with it, and that sucks.
It really does suck, and if you are listening to this and you have that experience, I'm sorry, because I know how shitty it feels when everything goes right, but it still goes wrong, if that makes sense. Because again, despite how much work we put into ourselves, it comes and it sucks. But, you know, if we continue to make these changes in our lives, it's good for our mental health. It's great. But this is one of those times where I just want to say I wish I didn't have a mental illness, because I think that it would be great to just do these lifestyle changes to make my mental health better. And I know that everyone has challenges that would stop them, but it's aggravating to know that I can't really do anything about this, you know?
Yeah, the only option you have of dealing with this really is your medication.
And therapy and counseling.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's inclusive under medication in my books.
But it's there. And it sucks that it's just something you have to deal with, right? It's like, I don't know. At the end of the day, I can still kind of forgive myself if things go wrong because of my mental illness, but it's tough. It's really tough.
And then you start questioning, like, why me and everything like that. And it spirals hard.
I don't mean to say it like a victim, you know, but sometimes I wish I could just victimize myself and be like, oh, poor me. I wish this wouldn't happen. Why is life so cruel? But again, when you do everything right and it still feels like you did wrong, it sucks.
Do you want to just quickly elaborate on the difference between mental health and mental illness for us, Steven?
Well, the best comparison would be between physical health and physical illness, right? Like a healthy physical individual might have a physical illness, like say diabetes, but they're separate because, you know, they're separate. Like that. There's no really other way to put it.
So it's like if you have, say, diabetes or you peptic ulcers or something, you know, you can still be physically healthy, but you can display symptoms of your illness that harm your physical health.
Exactly. And taking care of your physical health is going to help with your physical illness, but at times your physical illness is still going to be like, hey, you're a little bitch.
Yeah. So like cardiovascular disease even.
Yeah.
You can still have a heart attack even if you are physically healthy.
And that's the reality of it.
So you can still have a mental health or a mental illness flare up even if you are mentally healthy.
Yeah, and that's really challenging, but I guess I want to tell everybody who's maybe you aren't struggling with a mental illness, and that's great, but for the people who are listening to this, I want to tell you that you're doing okay. Like, I know that you have to put more effort into things than a lot of other people, and it sucks. It's hard. I don't want to deal with it some days, but you're here and you're still doing it, and it's hard, you know? And I want to tell you that I'm proud of you because you're doing something that's really hard, you know, even if it's just, like I said, that change from not eating to eating something like a few cookies in the pantry. That's great. Or not doing like CrossFit, like maybe getting 10 minutes of exercise. That's great, you know. And I really hope that you can forgive yourself if things start to go wrong. Yeah, I suppose like no matter what your struggle is right now, the fact that you recognize it or the fact that you're even putting in a little effort into it, you're doing great. Okay. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be instant. It's yours. It's messy. But that's okay. We're all learning, right? So that's going to be the end of season 1. In case you guys didn't know, Levi's going to be tree planting this summer, so it's not really possible for him to be doing this podcast. So it's going to be the Steven show. No, I got big things coming in season 2. Like, I'm going to be focusing a lot more on interviews and stuff. So we're also going to start talking about some different mental illnesses other than ADHD, because we've really focused on that. But I'm going to start to explore depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and more, maybe, possibly. I don't know. Stay tuned for that. So yeah, if you guys like this episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at our1in3podcast and to subscribe to us on whatever you're listening to.
The resources and references for this episode will be found in the description. And if you want to learn more about this topic, then please check them out.
So once again, I got to say that we are not medical professionals, and you should talk to your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being.